Captain Jake Morrison stared at the dark screen in front of him. The coffee in his cup had gone cold hours ago, but he didn't care. What he had just heard would change everything for humanity. The bridge of the U.E.'s Discovery was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. His crew was asleep in their quarters, trusting him to keep watch during the night shift. Lisa Hayes, his navigator, had left her station clean and organized as always. Danny Clark, the engineer, had fixed 3 small problems before going to bed. Kate Phillips, who handled all their communications, had logged the day's reports, and Messages.Jake had been doing routine checks when he picked up the strange signals. At first, he thought it was just space noise, or maybe signals from a distant trading ship. But when he ran the signals through the computer, he found something that made his blood run cold. The signals were encrypted messages between Coalition High Command and the Zeltharian Empire. Jake knew he shouldn't be listening to these messages, but something told him to keep going. What he learned made him sick to his stomach. For 300 years, humans had been part of the Galactic Coalition. They had followed the rules, paid their taxes, and sent their young people to serve in Coalition military forces. Earth's leaders always said being in the Coalition was good for humanity. They said it kept humans safe and gave them access to advanced technology. But the messages Jake intercepted told a different story. The Coalition had been lying to humanity for decades. Every time human scientists made a breakthrough Coalition, officials would either steal the idea or make sure it never got used. When humans invented something new, other alien species would somehow come up with the same idea a few weeks later and get all the credit. The worst part was what they called Protocol 7. Jake's hands shook as he read the details. The Coalition planned to move all human colonies to a special area of space they called a reserve. They told Earth's government it would be good for humans, giving them their own space to grow and develop. But the real reason was to lock humans away like animals in a cage. The Coalition was scared of humans. The messages made that clear. They said humans were too creative, too quick to adapt, and too dangerous if they ever realized their full potential. So instead of letting humans grow strong, they decided to keep them weak and contained. Jake read message after message. The Coalition had been planning this for years. They had slowly convinced Earth's leaders that moving to the reserve was a good idea. President Helen Ross had already agreed to start the relocation program. She thought she was helping humanity get better treatment in the Coalition. She had no idea she was signing humanity's death warrant. The ship's computer beeped softly. Jake looked at the sensor readings and felt his heart stop. 3 Coalition warships were heading straight for the Discovery. They had detected his ship. Intercepting the classified messages. Jake knew he had seconds to make a choice that would change his life forever. He could try to explain what happened, claim it was an accident, and hope the Coalition would believe him. But he knew they wouldn't. The messages he had read made it clear that the Coalition didn't trust humans and were looking for any excuse to speed up. Protocol 7, or he could run. Jake's finger hovered over the emergency alert button that would wake his crew. If he pressed it, there would be no going back. He would be making his entire crew into criminals in the eyes of the Coalition. They would all become fugitives, hunted across the galaxy. But if he didn't press it, humanity would walk blindly into a trap that had been 300 years in the making. The Coalition ships were getting closer. Their weapons were already charging, ready to disable the Discovery's engines and capture everyone on board. Jake thought about his crew sleeping peacefully in their beds. He thought about his sister back on Earth, working as a teacher, believing the Coalition propaganda about a bright future for humanity. He thought about all the human colonies scattered across the galaxy, trusting their leaders to keep them safe. Jake pressed the button. Alarms screamed through the ship. Emergency lights flashed red as his crew scrambled from their quarters. Lisa Hayes reached the bridge first, her hair messy from sleep, but her eyes sharp and focused. "What's happening, Captain?" she asked, sliding into her navigation chair. "We're about to become the most wanted criminals in the galaxy," Jake said, his hands flying over the control panels. "Plot a course for the Kepler asteroid field. Maximum speed." Danny Clark stumbled onto the bridge, still putting on his uniform jacket. "Captain, the engines are running hot. If we push them much harder, we might blow the power core." "Better than letting the Coalition catch us," Jake replied. He could see the confusion on his crew's faces, but there was no time to explain everything now. Kate Phillips took her station and immediately started scanning Coalition communication channels. "Captain, I'm picking up orders for our arrest. They're calling us pirates and spies." The Discovery shook as Coalition patrol ships fired warning shots across their bow. Jake knew the next shots wouldn't be warnings. "All crew, brace for emergency jump," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "We're leaving Coalition space, and we're not coming back." Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Course plotted, Captain." "But sir, if we jump to the Kepler field, we'll be in neutral space. The Coalition will declare us outlaws." "They already have," Jake said grimly. He looked at each of his crew members. These people had served with him for 3 years. They trusted him with their lives. Now he was asking them to trust him with their futures. "I need you all to know something," Jake said as the ship prepared for the hyperspace jump. "What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I have proof. The Coalition has been lying to humanity for centuries. They're planning to imprison our entire species, and Earth's government is helping them do it." The ship jumped to hyperspace just as Coalition energy beams filled the space where they had been. Jake felt the familiar sensation of reality bending around them as they traveled faster than light toward the asteroid field. For the next hour, as they hid among the floating rocks of the Kepler field, Jake told his crew everything. He showed them the intercepted messages, the details of Protocol 7, and the evidence of centuries of theft and deception. He watched their faces change from confusion to anger to determination. "So what do we do now, Captain?" Danny asked when Jake finished explaining. "We can't go back to Earth. The Coalition will arrest us the moment we enter human space. We fight back," Jake said simply, "but not the way they expect. We're going to find every human who still believes in freedom. We're going to show them the truth about the Coalition, and then we're going to make sure humanity never gets caged again." Lisa looked at the star charts on her screen. "Captain, there are dozens of human colonies out there. Independent traders, mining operations, research stations. If we can reach them before the Coalition starts the relocations, then we build a resistance," Jake finished. "The Coalition thinks humans are dangerous when we're creative and adaptable. Let's show them just how dangerous we can be when we're also angry." Kate looked up from her communication station. "Captain, I'm detecting several ships moving toward human colonies in the outer systems. Coalition ships with military escorts." Jake felt a cold anger settle in his chest. The relocations were starting ahead of schedule. Somewhere out there, human families were being told they were being moved for their own good. They had no idea they were being led into a prison. "Set course for the nearest human settlement," Jake ordered. "It's time to start warning people about what's really coming." As the Discovery moved deeper into neutral space, Jake made a promise to himself and to humanity. The Coalition had made one critical mistake in their centuries of planning. They had assumed humans would go quietly into their cage. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 3 months had passed since Jake Morrison and his crew had fled Coalition space. The Discovery now hid in an abandoned mining station deep in the Titan belt, surrounded by floating chunks of rock and metal that blocked most sensor scans. Station had been empty for 20 years, but Jake's crew had managed to get the basic systems working again. The mining station had become much more than just a hiding place. It was now the secret headquarters of something the Coalition had never expected to face. Organized human resistance. Jake stood in what used to be the station's main control room, looking at a holographic map that showed human settlements across the galaxy. Red dots marked colonies that had already been relocated to the Terra Nova Reserve. Yellow dots showed places where Coalition forces were preparing for forced relocations. Green dots were colonies that had received warnings and were preparing to resist. There were far too many red dots. "Another convoy just arrived at Terra Nova," said Amy Turner, a former corporate security chief who had joined the resistance after Coalition forces destroyed her company for refusing to hand over human technology patents. 3 transport ships, carrying families from the New Dakota colony. Jake clenched his fists. New Dakota had been a peaceful farming world with over 50,000 people. The Coalition had told them they were being moved to a better world with richer soil and perfect weather. The families had packed their belongings and ordered the transports willingly, believing they were going to a better life. "Any word from our contacts inside the reserve?" Jake asked. Rick Stone, a former Coalition military officer who had been quietly forced out of service for asking too many questions, shook his head. "Communication is heavily restricted, but the few messages we've gotten out paint a bad picture. Overcrowded housing, limited food supplies, and no technology more advanced than basic farming tools." Jake had recruited Rick 3 weeks ago when they rescued him from a Coalition prison transport. Rick had been arrested for trying to investigate why so many human officers were being transferred to inactive duty. Now he was one of Jake's most trusted advisors. "What about the shipyards?" Jake asked Danny Clark, who had become the Resistance's chief engineer. "We've got 3 sites operational now," Danny reported. "The main yard here in the Titan Belt, plus smaller facilities in the Ghost Nebula and the Broken Chain System. We're building ships, but not fast enough." The Resistance had been growing slowly but steadily. Human traders who had seen their roots restricted were eager to fight back. Military personnel who had been forced out of Coalition service wanted revenge. Scientists and engineers whose work had been stolen or suppressed were ready to use their skills for the cause, but they needed ships, weapons, and supplies. Most of all, they needed allies. "Sir," called Kate Phillips from her communication station. "I'm getting a coded message from Zephix." Jake smiled for the first time in days. Zephix was a Corthanian trader who ran what he called the Gray Market, a network of smugglers and black market dealers who sold restricted technology to anyone with enough money. The Coalition had been trying to shut down his operation for years, but Zephix was too clever and had too many contacts to catch. More importantly, Zephix had no love for the Coalition's increasing control over galactic trade. "Put him through on the secure channel," Jake ordered. The holographic display flickered and showed the image of a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms and bright yellow eyes. Zephix looked around the control room with obvious approval. "Captain Morrison," Zephix said in his oddly musical voice, "I see you have been busy since our last conversation. Your resistance is becoming quite well known in certain circles. Good news or bad news?" Jake asked. "Both, as always," Zephix replied. "The bad news is that Coalition intelligence has put a very large bounty on your head. Quinder himself is personally leading the hunt for you." Jake felt a chill. Quinder was the Zeltharian spymaster, known throughout the galaxy for his ruthless efficiency. If he was personally involved, it meant the Coalition saw the human resistance as a serious threat. "And the good news?" Jake asked. "The good news is that many people are very interested in seeing you succeed," Zephix said. including some you might not expect. The alien's image was replaced by intelligence reports and star charts. Jake studied the information with growing excitement. Young Altarians are growing tired of their elders' support for coalition policies, Zephyx explained. They remember when their people were warriors, not politicians. Some of their younger nobles are quietly sending supplies to resistance groups. Jake nodded. The Altarians had been one of the coalition's founding members, but their warrior culture had always been at odds with the coalition's bureaucratic approach to governing. There's more, Zephyx continued. Several Drakmari clans are reconsidering their loyalty to the coalition. They joined originally because they were promised protection from their enemies, but now they see the coalition as becoming too controlling. The Drakmari were fierce fighters who valued independence above all else. If they turned against the coalition, it would be a major blow to coalition military strength. What about the humans in the reserve? Jake asked. Do we have any way to contact them? That's the most interesting news of all, Zephyx said. Your people are not sitting quietly in their cage. There have been several escape attempts and reports of organized resistance inside the reserve itself. Jake felt a surge of pride. Even imprisoned and cut off from the outside galaxy, humans were still fighting. I have one more piece of information. That might interest you, Zephyx said. My sources tell me that a coalition research facility has been conducting experiments on captured humans. They're trying to understand what makes your species so ... adaptable. Jake's expression darkened. Where? Unknown. The facility is classified above my clearance level, but I'm working on it. After Zephyx ended the transmission, Jake called together his senior staff. The resistance had grown from 4 people on a single ship to over 300 volunteers spread across a dozen hidden bases. But they were still vastly outnumbered by coalition forces. We need to make contact with the resistance inside Terra Nova, Jake decided. And we need to start hitting coalition supply lines harder. Make them pay for every human they relocate. Amy Turner studied the tactical displays. Our intelligence network is getting better, but we're still mostly reactive. We need to start taking the initiative. What do you suggest? Jake asked. Hit them where it hurts most, Amy replied. Coalition military bases, supply depots, communication stations. Show the galaxy that humans won't go quietly. Rick Stone nodded agreement. I know coalition military procedures. With the right intelligence, we could cause serious damage with minimal risk to our people. And I've got some new ship designs that might even the odds, Danny added. Smaller, faster vessels that can hit hard and disappear before coalition forces can respond. Jake looked around the room at these people who had given up everything to fight for human freedom. Former coalition officers, independent traders, civilian engineers, corporate security specialists. They had all chosen to become outlaws rather than accept humanity's imprisonment. Paul Griffin's team has made some interesting discoveries about coalition technology, Jake said. Apparently, their systems are designed to counter known alien fighting styles, but they've never had to deal with human tactics. Paul Griffin was a brilliant engineer who had been blacklisted by the coalition for developing dangerous artificial intelligence systems. His work on combining human creativity with advanced technology was already showing promising results. Over the next few hours, they planned their first major operation. A coalition supply convoy was scheduled to pass through the Meridian system in 2 weeks, carrying advanced weapons and equipment to the Terra Nova Reserve. The convoy would be heavily guarded, but intelligence suggested most of the guards would be automated systems. This is our chance to show the galaxy that humanity isn't finished, Jake told his team. The coalition thinks they've caged us, but they've made one critical mistake. What's that? Lisa asked. They've given us something we've never had before, Jake replied. A reason to work together. As the meeting broke up, and his staff returned to their duties, Jake remained in the control room, staring at the star map. Somewhere out there, millions of humans were living in the Coalition's prison, believing they had been relocated for their own good. Other humans were still free, but didn't know the truth about what was planned for them. The Coalition had spent centuries planning humanity's imprisonment. They had been patient, careful, and thorough, but they had underestimated one crucial aspect of human nature. When humans were pushed too far, they didn't just fight back. They got creative about it. Jake smiled as he looked at green dots on his map, representing human colonies that had received warnings and were preparing to resist. The Coalition had wanted to cage humanity, but instead they had awakened something they weren't prepared to face: a united human species with nothing left to lose. Paul Griffin stared at the data on his screen and couldn't believe what he was seeing. For 6 months, he had been studying captured Coalition technology, trying to understand why their systems were so advanced. Now he had found something that changed everything. The answer wasn't in their technology at all. It was in human minds. Paul worked in a converted cargo bay deep inside the Resistance's main base. Around him, other engineers and scientists worked on various projects, but Paul had been focused on one specific question: why did Coalition leaders fear human creativity so much? The breakthrough came when he was analyzing brain scans from human volunteers and comparing them to similar scans from other species that Zephyx had provided through the black market. What Paul discovered made him run straight to Jake Morrison's office. "Captain, you need to see this," Paul said, bursting into the command center where Jake was reviewing reports from their recent supply convoy raid. The raid had been a complete success. Jake's forces had captured 3 Coalition supply ships without losing a single person. More importantly, they had rescued 50 human prisoners who were being transported to secret research facilities. "What is it, Paul?" Jake asked, noting the excitement in the engineer's voice. "I figured out why the Coalition is so scared of us," Paul said, connecting his portable computer to the main display. "It's not just that we're creative or adaptable. It's something much more fundamental." The display showed brain scan patterns from different species. Paul pointed to the human scans, which looked different from all the others. "Human consciousness operates on a quantum level that's completely unique," Paul explained. "Our brains can form connections with artificial intelligence systems in ways that other species simply can't. We don't just use technology, Captain. We can actually merge with it." Jake looked at the data, but didn't fully understand the implications. "What does that mean for us?" "It means we can create technology that thinks and adapts like living beings." Paul said, "I've been working on something I call the Neural Integration Protocol. It allows a human operator to temporarily merge their consciousness with a ship's computer system." Jake felt a chill of excitement. "You mean a human pilot could control an entire ship just by thinking about it?" "Better than that," Paul replied. "The human mind would enhance the ship's artificial intelligence, while the ship's processing power would enhance the human's ability to think and react. It would be like creating a new form of life that's both human and machine." Over the next few weeks, Paul worked with Dr. Susan Ward and Dr. Ben Hughes, 2 scientists who had been rescued from Coalition research facilities. They knew firsthand what the Coalition was trying to learn about human consciousness, because they had been the test subjects. "They kept running experiments on us," Dr. Ward explained as she helped refine the Neural Integration Protocol. "They couldn't understand how human minds could adapt so quickly to new situations. They tried to replicate it in their own systems, but they always failed. That's because they were approaching it wrong," Dr. Hughes added. "They thought consciousness was just complex programming. They didn't understand that human awareness has a quantum component that can't be artificially replicated." The first test pilot for the new technology was Alex Pierce, a former Coalition Navy pilot whose career had been destroyed when he refused orders to fire on civilian transports during what the Coalition called a police action. Alex had joined the Resistance 3 months earlier and quickly proved himself to be one of their best pilots. "I'm not going to lie to you," Paul told Alex as they prepared for the first test. "We don't know what this will do to your mind. The integration could be permanent, or it could cause damage we can't predict." Alex looked at the modified fighter ship they had prepared for the test. It was built using captured Coalition technology, combined with human innovations. The ship's computer system had been specifically designed to interface with human consciousness. "If this works, how much better will I be able to fly?" Alex asked. "Based on our simulations, you should be able to control multiple ship systems simultaneously while maintaining human intuition and creativity," Paul explained. "You'll think as fast as a computer, but still be able to make the kind of unexpected decisions that no artificial intelligence can predict." Alex climbed into the pilot's seat and put on the neural interface helmet. As the system activated, Jake and the other observers watched his vital signs on their monitors. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Alex's eyes opened wide and he smiled. "I can feel the ship," Alex said, his voice filled with wonder. "It's like the ship is part of my body. I can sense every system, every circuit, every piece of equipment." The test flight was amazing. Alex flew the ship in ways that should have been impossible. He performed maneuvers that would have torn apart a normal ship, but somehow the integrated human-machine consciousness could predict and compensate for every stress and strain. More importantly, when Jake sent other Resistance pilots to test Alex's abilities in combat simulation, they couldn't touch him. Alex could predict their moves before they made them, adapting his tactics faster than any purely human or purely artificial intelligence could manage. Word of the successful test spread quickly through the Resistance network. Within days, pilots were lining up to undergo the neural integration protocol. Not all of them were successful, but those who could handle the process became incredibly effective fighters. The Resistance's first major victory using the new technology came during the Battle of Kepler Station. Coalition forces had surrounded a human colony transport that was trying to escape forced relocation. 40 Coalition ships moved in to capture the transport and its 3,000 passengers. Jake led 12 Resistance ships equipped with neural integration technology into battle. The Coalition forces had every advantage: more ships, better weapons, and superior positioning. But they had never faced human-machine hybrid consciousness in combat. The battle lasted only 20 minutes. The Coalition ships, controlled by traditional artificial intelligence systems, couldn't adapt to the unpredictable and creative tactics used by the Resistance pilots. Every time the Coalition AI tried to predict what the human ships would do next, the neural-integrated pilots would do something completely different. Alex Pierce destroyed 4 Coalition ships by himself, using maneuvers that looked more like dancing than fighting. Other Resistance pilots reported similar experiences, describing the battle as if they were playing a game rather than fighting for their lives. When the battle was over, 37 Coalition ships had been destroyed or disabled. The Resistance had lost no ships and suffered only minor damage. The victory at Kepler Station sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Coalition military leaders couldn't understand how a small human force had defeated a much larger fleet so completely. Intelligence reports from the battle made no sense to Coalition strategists, who were trained to fight against predictable alien combat patterns. But the real impact of the victory was political. News of the battle spread to every human colony and Resistance cell in the galaxy. For the first time since the Resistance began, humans everywhere began to believe they could actually win. More importantly, other alien species began to take notice. Prince Kelvin of the Altarian Third Dynasty was the first to openly declare support for human independence. Several Altarian battle groups defected from Coalition service to join the resistance. The Coalition has forgotten the warrior's code, Prince Kelvin announced in a broadcast that reached across the galaxy. They seek to win through deception and imprisonment rather than honorable combat. The humans fight with courage and innovation. They deserve our respect and our aid. The Drakmari were next. 3 entire clans declared independence from Coalition authority and offered their services to the human resistance. The Drakmari had always valued freedom above security, and they recognized kindred spirits in the human fighters, even some Coalition. Species began to question their government's actions. Reports of the Terra Nova Reserve's true conditions had leaked to the galactic news networks. Images of overcrowded prison camps and restricted human families sparked protests on dozens of Coalition worlds. Dr. Paul Griffin achieved another breakthrough by developing what he called quantum consciousness weapons. These energy weapons could disrupt Coalition AI systems by introducing chaotic human thought patterns. When fired at Coalition ships, the weapons would cause their computer systems to become confused and unreliable. It's like introducing madness into a perfectly ordered mind, Paul explained to Jake. Coalition AI systems are designed for logical, predictable responses. When we hit them with pure human creativity and chaos, they simply can't cope. The weapons proved devastatingly effective. In the liberation of the Titan Industrial Complex, the galaxy's largest shipbuilding facility, the joint human-Altarian assault, led by Jake, General Mary Collins, and Prince Kelvin captured the facility with minimal casualties. With the Titan complex under resistance control, humans could finally build full-sized warships instead of relying on converted civilian vessels. The tide of the war was turning, and everyone in the galaxy knew it. As Jake stood on the bridge of the first human-built battleship to roll out of the Titan complex, he thought about how far they had come. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the emergency alerts flood in from across the galaxy. The Coalition's response to human victories had been swift and brutal. Supreme Commander Velther had declared humanity a rogue species threatening galactic stability, and now Coalition forces were moving to end the human resistance once and for all. The first target was New Arizona, a peaceful farming world that had declared independence from Coalition authority 3 weeks earlier. The planet's 2 million inhabitants had no idea what was coming for them. Coalition fleet detected entering the New Arizona system, reported Kate Phillips from her communications station. 1 dreadnought, 6 heavy cruisers, and 12 escort ships. Jake felt ice in his veins. A dreadnought meant the Coalition wasn't planning to capture New Arizona. They were planning to destroy it completely. How long until we reach the system? Jake asked his navigator. 4 hours at maximum speed, Lisa Hayes replied. But sir, we only have 8 ships. That Coalition fleet outguns us 20-1. Jake looked at the tactical display showing their small fleet racing toward New Arizona. After capturing the Titan Industrial Complex, the Resistance had been building ships as fast as possible, but they still couldn't match Coalition firepower ship for ship. Alex, are you ready for this? Jake asked over the communication channel. Commander Alex Pierce, now the Resistance's most experienced neural integration pilot, was leading a squadron of fighters equipped with a new consciousness-merging technology. His voice came back calm and confident. We're ready, Admiral. The new pilots are adapting to the integration faster than we expected. I think we can give that dreadnought a nasty surprise. When Jake's fleet arrived at New Arizona, they found the Coalition dreadnought Eternal Judgment already in orbit above the planet. Fires were burning across the surface, where the massive ship's weapons had begun orbital bombardment. Thousands of civilians were already dead. Coalition forces, This is Admiral Morrison of the Free Human Navy. Jake broadcast on all frequencies. Cease your attack on civilian targets immediately. Supreme Commander Velthur's image appeared on the main screen. The alien leader looked exactly like what Jake had expected. Cold, calculating, and completely without mercy. Admiral Morrison, Velthur said with what might have been amusement, "You are too late. New Arizona will serve as an example to other human colonies considering rebellion. Surrender now, and we will make your execution quick." "I have a better idea," Jake replied. "Alex, you're clear for your run." What happened next became legend among human resistance fighters. Alex Pierce took his neural-integrated fighter directly toward the massive dreadnought, dodging defensive fire that should have vaporized his small ship. Other coalition ships moved to intercept him, but Alex's consciousness-merged reflexes allowed him to slip past them like a ghost dot at the last second. Alex didn't fire on the dreadnought's hull. Instead, he flew directly into the ship's hangar bay, landing inside the vessel's own docking area. "Alex, what are you doing?" Jake shouted over the communication channel. "Something no artificial intelligence would ever expect," Alex replied. His voice sounded strange, as if he was speaking from very far away. "I'm going to have a conversation with their computer." Using the neural integration protocol, Alex connected his consciousness directly to the dreadnought's main computer system. The Eternal Judgment was controlled by one of the most advanced artificial intelligence systems in the Coalition fleet, designed to coordinate the ship's weapons, shields, and tactical systems with perfect efficiency, but it had never encountered a human mind before. Alex's consciousness flowed through the ship's computer networks like water through pipes. The dreadnought's AI tried to fight back, but it was designed to counter other artificial intelligence systems. Not a human brain operating on quantum levels it couldn't understand. Within minutes, Alex had taken control of the massive ship's weapon systems. The Eternal Judgment's guns, which had been bombarding New Arizona, suddenly turned on the other coalition ships in the fleet. "What is happening?" Velthur demanded as his own flagship began destroying his escort vessels. "You wanted to see what makes humans dangerous," Jake replied, watching in amazement as the dreadnought's weapons tore through coalition ships. "Now you know." The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the entire coalition fleet had been destroyed, most of it by their own flagship. Alex managed to disconnect from the dreadnought's systems and return to his fighter before the massive ship's crew could regain control. News of the Battle of New Arizona spread across the galaxy faster than any official coalition report could suppress it. A single human pilot had captured a dreadnought and used it to destroy an entire coalition fleet. The story grew with each telling, but the basic facts were impossible to deny. More importantly, the attack on New Arizona had shown the galaxy what the coalition was truly willing to do. Orbital bombardment of civilian targets violated every treaty and agreement the coalition claimed to uphold. Protests erupted on dozens of coalition worlds. President Helen Ross, who had been quietly supporting the resistance while maintaining Earth's official neutrality, finally decided to act openly. In a broadcast that reached every human colony in the galaxy, she revealed the truth about Protocol 7 and announced Earth's withdrawal from the coalition. "For 3 centuries, we trusted the coalition to protect humanity's interests," President Ross said. "We now know that trust was misplaced. Earth hereby declares its independence and calls upon all human colonies to resist coalition tyranny." The speech triggered uprisings across human space. Colonies that had been preparing for forced relocation instead declared independence. Human crews serving in coalition military forces began deserting in massive numbers. Several coalition bases were captured by their own human personnel. The most dramatic escape came from the Terra Nova Reserve itself. General Mary Collins, who had been organizing resistance inside the prison colony for months, led a massive breakout that liberated over 2 million humans in a single operation. Collins had been working with smugglers and resistance contacts to gather weapons and ships inside the supposedly secure reserve. When the breakout began, the coalition guards found themselves facing not panicked refugees, but organized military units led by experienced officers. The coalition made a mistake when they imprisoned military personnel alongside civilians, Collins explained in her first report to Jake after the escape. They gave us time to train and organize. When we broke out, we weren't just running away. We were launching a coordinated military operation. The escaping humans captured significant coalition military assets, including 3 destroyer-class ships and enough weapons to equip a small army. Collins's forces, now calling themselves the Free Terra Brigade, immediately began coordinating with Jake's fleet for larger operations. But the resistance gained an even more powerful ally when Prince Kelvin of the Altarian Third Dynasty arrived. With half the Altarian Royal Navy, the prince had been quietly building support among younger Altarians who remembered their people's warrior traditions. The coalition has made us weak with their bureaucracy and politics, Prince Kelvin announced as his battle groups took positions alongside human ships. The humans fight with honor and courage. They remind us of what we used to be, the Altarian. Defection was a massive blow to coalition military strength. The Altarians had some of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, and their warrior culture made them formidable allies in battle. Dr. Paul Griffin's research teams made another breakthrough during this period by developing quantum network communication. This technology allowed instantaneous communication across any distance, giving resistance forces a huge tactical advantage over coalition forces that still relied on slower communication methods. We can coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously, Paul explained to Jake during a strategy meeting. The coalition won't know what hit them until it's too late. The technology was tested during a series of coordinated strikes against coalition supply lines. Resistance forces hit 12 different targets at exactly the same time, capturing weapons, ships, and supplies while avoiding coalition response fleets entirely. But the coalition wasn't finished. Supreme Commander Velther began pulling back coalition forces from frontier regions, concentrating them around the core worlds where coalition leadership was based. Intelligence reports suggested the coalition was preparing for a final assault that would either crush the human resistance completely or die trying. They're going to make their stand at coalition headquarters, Jake told his senior staff during a war council aboard the Retribution. Velther knows he can't win a long war against us. He's gambling everything on one massive battle. General Collins studied the tactical reports from the core worlds. How many ships can they field? At least 3,000, Admiral Stone reported. Stone had been promoted to admiral after successfully leading the defense of the New Virginia colony against a coalition assault, plus planetary defense systems, orbital fortresses, and automated weapon platforms. Jake looked around the table at his commanders. They had come so far since that first desperate flight from coalition space. 2 years after Captain Jake Morrison first discovered the coalition's betrayal, the galaxy was at war. Admiral Morrison now commanded the largest fleet in human history, over 300 ships equipped with neural integration technology and crewed by humans who had nothing left to lose. The U.S. Retribution, Morrison's flagship, floated in space near the edge of the core worlds, where coalition headquarters waited like a fortress. Around the massive station, 3,000 coalition ships formed defensive lines that stretched across 3 star systems. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, but Jake wasn't worried about the numbers anymore. Humans had learned to fight differently than other species. They didn't need to match the coalition ship for ship. They just needed to be more clever. Final intelligence report from our scouts, announced General Mary Collins, who now commanded all resistance ground forces. Coalition headquarters has over 50 million people on board, including the families of coalition officials. They're using civilians as human shields. Jake studied the tactical display showing the massive space station. It was more like a floating city than a military base, with residential areas, shopping districts, and schools alongside government offices and military command centers. That's why we're not going to blow it up, Jake said. We're going to capture it. The plan they had developed was ambitious beyond anything the Resistance had attempted before. While Jake's fleet attacked the Coalition's outer defenses, Resistance cells on Coalition worlds would launch simultaneous uprisings. At the same time, Collins would lead ground forces to capture key Coalition leaders, including Supreme Commander Velther himself. The key to everything was Dr. Rachel Stone, Rick Stone's sister, who had been rescued from a Coalition research facility 6 months earlier. Rachel was a quantum physicist who had been forced to work on Coalition experiments involving human consciousness. Her research, combined with Paul Griffin's neural integration technology, had led to the development of the most powerful weapon in the Resistance arsenal. The quantum network is ready, Rachel reported from her station aboard the Retribution. I can link every ship in our fleet through quantum consciousness fields. We'll be able to coordinate our movements like a single organism instead of individual ships, Jake nodded. The quantum network was the evolution of everything they had learned about human consciousness and technology. Instead of just individual pilots merging with their ships, entire fleets could now share a collective awareness while maintaining their individual creativity and decision-making ability. Coalition forces are moving into attack formation, reported Kate Phillips. They're not waiting for us to make the first move. Through the viewports of the Retribution's bridge, Jake could see the Coalition fleet advancing. Thousands of ships moving in perfect formation, their artificial intelligence systems coordinating every movement with mechanical precision. All ships, activate the quantum network, Jake ordered. The effect was immediate and startling. Jake could suddenly feel the consciousness of every pilot in his fleet. He could sense Lisa Hayes plotting navigation routes 3 ships away, Danny Clark monitoring engine systems on a dozen different vessels, and Alex Pierce preparing for the most dangerous mission of his life. The Coalition fleet attacked with overwhelming force, expecting to crush the smaller human force through sheer numbers. But when their weapons fired, the human ships weren't where the targeting computers predicted they would be. The Resistance fleet moved like a school of fish or a flock of birds, each ship responding to threats that other ships detected, sharing information and reactions faster than any computer network could process. When Coalition forces fired at one human ship, 5 others would instantly adjust their positions to provide covering fire. Their targeting systems can't lock onto us, Alex reported with excitement in his voice. Every time they tried to predict where we'll be, we're somewhere else entirely. The battle raged for hours. Coalition ships had superior weapons and armor, but they couldn't hit targets that moved with shared consciousness. Human ships darted between massive Coalition battleships like insects, striking at weak points and vanishing before return fire could reach them. But the real turning point came when Alex Pierce began his final mission. Using a specially modified fighter equipped with the most advanced neural integration system ever built, Alex flew directly toward Coalition headquarters itself. "Alex, you don't have to do this," Jake said over the communication channel. "We can find another way." "No, Admiral," Alex replied. "This is what I was born to do. Besides, someone needs to have a conversation with their central computer." Coalition defense systems threw everything they had at Alex's fighter, but the neural integration technology allowed him to react faster than any automated defense could target him. He slipped through energy barriers, dodged missile strikes, and flew through gaps in the defensive grid that were too small for any normal pilot to navigate. Alex reached Coalition headquarters. He didn't try to dock in a hangar bay like he had done with the Dreadnought at New Arizona. Instead, he flew his fighter directly into the station's main computer core, crashing through heavily armored barriers to reach the central processing unit dot as emergency alarms screamed throughout. Coalition headquarters. Alex connected his consciousness to the most powerful computer system in the galaxy. The station's artificial intelligence was designed to coordinate the entire Coalition government, managing everything from military operations to civilian supply chains. But like every other Coalition AI, it had never encountered a human mind. Alex's consciousness flowed through the computer networks like lightning through metal. Within minutes, he had access to every system on the station: life support, communications, security, and most importantly, the automated defense grid. "I'm in," Alex reported, his voice echoing strangely through the quantum communication network. "I can see everything. The Coalition's entire command structure, their secret files, their plans for dealing with other species they consider threats." "Can you disable their defenses?" Jake asked. "Better than that," Alex replied. "I can turn them against the Coalition fleet." What happened next became known as the miracle of the core worlds. Coalition headquarters, the most heavily defended location in the galaxy, suddenly began firing on its own defensive fleet. Massive orbital weapons platforms that had been protecting the station turned their guns on Coalition ships. Supreme Commander Velthur, watching his own headquarters destroy. His fleet made a desperate decision. He ordered all remaining Coalition forces to abandon their positions and retreat to emergency coordinates in the Outer Rim. But it was too late. Resistance uprisings across Coalition worlds had already begun. On planet after planet, humans and their alien allies captured Coalition military bases, communication centers, and government buildings. The carefully planned simultaneous attacks left Coalition forces scattered and unable to coordinate a response. General Collins led a boarding party onto Coalition headquarters while the station's defenses were still under Alex's control. They found Supreme Commander Velthur in his command center, surrounded by panicking staff officers who couldn't understand how their own computers had turned against them. "Supreme Commander," Collins said as resistance soldiers secured the area, "you're under arrest for crimes against humanity and violations of galactic peace treaties." Velthur looked at the human general with something like respect. "How did you do it? How did your species learn to turn our own technology against us?" "You made one critical mistake," Collins replied. "You thought technology was just tools and weapons. You never understood that for humans, technology is an extension of who we are." The surrender negotiations took place in the same room where Coalition leaders had planned Protocol 7. Jake Morrison, now the leader of the free human worlds, sat across from the remaining Coalition leadership. "What do you want?" asked Chancellor Mordun of the Hegemony, one of the few Coalition leaders who hadn't fled or been captured. "We want what we should have had from the beginning," Jake replied. "Freedom to develop our own technology, explore our own space, and make our own decisions about our future. And if we refuse?" Jake gestured toward the viewports, where human and allied ships now patrolled the space around Coalition headquarters. "You don't have the strength to refuse anymore. Your choice is simple. Agree to peaceful coexistence, or watch your government collapse completely." The negotiations took 3 days, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Coalition agreed to recognize the independence of all human worlds and to compensate the families of those who had died in Coalition prison camps. They also agreed to return all stolen human technology and research. More importantly, they agreed to a new galactic charter that guaranteed the rights of all species to technological and cultural development without interference from others. Ceremony establishing the Human Independence Federation took place on New Earth, a planet that had been one of the first to declare independence from coalition rule. Jake Morrison was elected as the first president of the Federation, with General Collins as Minister of Defense and Dr. Paul Griffin as head of the new Department of Advanced Sciences.